So, um, uh, I've been mulling over this Charlie Kirk scandal, and I don't know. I mean, the guy was a troglodyte. He was right wing reactionary. Had nothing good to say about the rights of the people. At least in terms of the right to a roof over your fucking head, the right to not starve to death, joining trade unions. I'm pretty sure he was, who knows, maybe to placate his base, sort of like he placated his base to start going against Israel. He might have said, well, okay, unions, all right, if that's what the people want. Although, who knows in America? I mean, as I think his name was Weisbord. I'll have to look him up more. But he was basically a Trotskyist Jew in New York City, in the 1930s. But he made some incisive comments, which was, basically America is a profoundly petty bourgeois, and I would add lumpen, criminal country. So, do they really have, to what extent do the American masses, have class awareness, let alone, class consciousness? It's pretty damn low. Not to say it isn't there. I mean, you go to Detroit, and it's still, you can find people with class consciousness, certainly class awareness, who aren't, like hipsters who read, the whatever, Isaac Deutscher's biography of Trotsky, or John Reed's 10 Days That Shook the World, whose parents or grandparents at this point weren't, Shackmanites, that is, like kind of, I don't know what you call them, super liberal, deep pink super liberal CIA socialists, let's say. Yeah, I knew those people and their kids and, now grandkids, I suppose, although I didn't stick around long enough to know their grandkids. But anyway, so, Charlie Kirk, politically, he was, thoroughly reactionary. He wasn't as stupid and anti-intellectual as, I don't know, Sean Hannity. Let's say, oh God, he's a living embodiment of why we need mass deportation and repressions of the Irish in America. But, yeah. But then again, you read about, Weisbord writing about, these, phony Yankee farmers in America, just almost, solely speculating on land, or, I went down to do some hog eradication in, like, Missouri. I wanted to, and, immediately these fucking Yankee Confederate, scumbags started, 5 different angles on how they could, like, swindle you. We'll take you on a hog hunt. Well, no, don't you need these hogs eradicated? Oh no, you want to, use them as like another profit vector so you can speculate. Well, fuck you. That's not how my people rolled. They were anarcho-communist sympathizers for the most part. They were workers. They were for social democracy. They weren't for fucking swindlers speculating on land, or speculating, let alone speculating on housing, or whatever else. And that's what basically the dominant, the great American tradition is, to be a scumbag liar, a cheat, a thief, and if necessary a murderer. It's just business. What is it? It is what it is, as the scumbags that I worked with in Chicago used to say. And I even had some African scumbag in Moscow say that to me right before they tried to swindle me for, what was it, like cleaning a watch face. Like, I ended up buying this one, which was $30, too expensive. I was told by the watch, master in St. Petersburg. Um, and it's not even a real Soviet movement, which, the fucking swindler in Moscow, kind of implied claim that it was. He stuck one word in homage, to the Soviet, watch, which is what I was interested in buying, but whatever. And that's why during the revolution here in the former Soviet Union, we revoked the civil rights of probably half of America. They wouldn't be able to vote, if people like me had our way. You can have your fucking Socratic method all you like, and the fact that this asshole Kirk had a mass following among asshole students, although well, still, I don't, you're old enough to study and ask questions, and I've been around asshole youth for many years, and like your hero gets shot, really I don't care that much, George Galloway just did some good speculation that number one, Mossad and the CIA are intertwined with one another. Israel is the 51st state; it can do no wrong, and Kirk was a troublesome priest, as the Irish say, as George says. And so basically Trump and friends with the CIA and with the blessing of Mossad, or maybe the active participation of Mossad, decided to take him out because he was he could have run for office as president. He had a mass base, a following. He was pivoting away from the line of support for the Zionists at any and all costs, and so he was assassinated. On that, in that regard, I guess I feel some sympathy for Kirk. But overall, in terms of as a Marxist, we look at the basic issues and the base of someone's support, and basically, Kirk would have been leading a bunch of basically disappointed petit bourgeois, small, shopkeepers, speculators, office pencil pushers, for most of his base, and maybe people in the trade somewhat, who think rah rah America, and fuck the lazy Marxist bastards who don't want to slave away 12 or more hours a day, and work a real job like I do. Not my circus, not my monkeys. I mean, I guess the only thing that would disturb me is, but it happens, all the time in history, that the state, the ruling class, their politicians, as Weisberg pointed out, basically the little Freikorps, the little shopkeepers, the Babbitts. Yeah, basically the Babbitts who run the government. They murder people all the time. Indirectly. Social murder. They almost murdered me through cancer. So, and they appoint some other Babbitt Freikorps Nazi bitch, to oversee their little system at the airport. And, the FBI is filled with little Babbitt, bitches who don't return the phone calls of workers when our work is being stolen, prior to that. Or our union election was stolen, right? Or our union representative was basically, politically assassinated by the mob. Not physically, but he was thrown out of his office, purged. So, and we had, basically puppets installed instead, who then proceeded to wipe their ass with our contract. and bring in, more scabs, like double vesting, bringing in quote unquote chauffeurs, like 20 some odd an hour instead of 30 some odd an hour. And, for all the little Babbitt, Nazi cocksuckers out there who are like $30, 30 plus an hour. Well, this is Chicago, asshole. The cost of housing, you go to the shittiest neighborhood in Chicago, my buddy just told me the other day, and these bloodsuckers are now charging, I think it's like at least $1,200 a month for basically a studio apartment, in a war zone, in a shithole. So, so again, like people like you, like whatever it is, half of America, that's who is Babbitt, little Hitler, Freikorps bitch. We would have, you would have been lucky that we just took your fucking right to vote away, so, fuck off. Now, in terms of, prophecies of doom, will the ruling class, I've seen assertions out there, oh, well, the ruling class, there's the Republican ruling class and there's the liberal ruling class, and they basically want to foment a civil war of workers against workers. Well, when you have a population that, maybe, I don't know, like the majority of the consciousness is just, speculation, criminality, Babbitts, frankly, that kind of country needs a good cleansing. And, if one group wants to kill another group, I'm not going to get in the middle of it. Can it be prevented? Well, I don't know. It's like, at this point, trying to talk to these mopes about, good government, the Green Party, Ralph Nader, Rich Whitney, and, 10% voted for Rich Whitney when we actually had access to the media. So yeah, it's like Sodom and Gomorrah. It's slightly better, maybe. But then a lot of people didn't vote. But then they know that the game. I guess they feel that the game is rigged. I mean, it is rigged, but still, you should go, fight the bastards and organize. But they're just too lazy and just too, frankly, a lot of people, especially around Chicagoland, and all over, Hitler Freedom Land America, they enjoy things as they are. As George Carlin said, don't complain about the politicians because they're a reflection of you. So, if it all leads to a Ukraine, Liberia type of situation, I just have to shrug my shoulders because, people like me, a small minority of the country to be sure, what was it? I think in the end, let's say 3% of the USA in like 2000 voted for Nader. Was it over 3 or under 3? Whatever. Let's say 3% was the hardcore. Up to 20% would have voted for Nader, but Steinem, Jackson, Sweeney, the CIA, deep state, fucking puppets, worked with the media to rev up a campaign of, slander and smears against Saint Ralph, who lived his life as a saint, but in vain, because, the fucking, slimy cocksuckers, Sweeney, Jackson, Steinem, they decided that, there would be no social democracy, that, the Democratic Party, the little Babbitts, the little, Hitler lovers in America, they would continue to rule, and that was my whole adult life, basically, was being sandbagged by, filthy cocksuckers like that. So, what then? So, so, I know there are members of, say, the American Communist Party who, have feelings for America or the masses or whatever, but, I mean, maybe, say the 3% that are righteous, or the 10%, in Illinois or America, let's say, who would vote for, a real candidate who would register their dissent. Okay, they're, decent to even, and honorable people. Um, but in terms of would the country, uh, I guess Weisbord's idea, which I kind of like, but I don't know how realistic it is. It's sort of an after the fascist us kind of attitude. And, we see how well that worked in like Germany. Although, if the U.S. hadn't been able to intervene in like Italy and maybe, Italy, let's say, perhaps France, that, and even hadn't been there to stop the Soviet counter-revolutionary bureaucracy from advancing further into, all of Germany, even Germany. But, maybe after a cataclysm, the U.S. or the parts of it that aren't fucking batshit like the old Confederacy, and backward and stupid, maybe the North, of the USA could start to organize something social democratic, or, something like what they have in, I don't know, let's say Russia. I think America is kind of, between Turkey, so close to Mexico, so far from God, to turn around the Mexican joke. It's America's pretty socially backward and criminal. And so I guess America on balance it'd be like Ukraine. Not even Russia. Maybe the I don't know. Maybe Michigan, Minnesota. That's sort of kind of like Russia. But anyway, I'd say overall we're kind of like Ukraine. The smarter, more capable. Swindler elements of swindler elements of Ukraine. So a country of swindlers. After a cataclysm, what's left over? Could the grandchildren of swindlers organize a country to be coherent and rational and decent? I don't know. Will I be even alive for that? I guess it's historical speculation. As Zhou Enlai once said about the French Revolution, it's too early to tell. And CIA dad once said, you can't even really predict the weather past, even into tomorrow, he used to say. So I think so. We'll see. But anyway, as far as the Charlie Kirk assassination goes, too bad, so sad. But I guess, from the age of like 12 for me, I grew up with the knowledge that my whole family was brutally murdered over here. But then, I reflect on that. Who were they? They were, maybe they were just shitty fucking merchant swindlers. Or not. Maybe they were like Bernie Sanders. Yeah, he's a swindler, but he's at least, he's a swindler who would give you like socialized medicine and rent control, like Mamdani. So he's a better class of swindler. They were better classes of swindlers. And then, the worst classes of swindlers sent the Nazis to murder them all. Yeah. So Charlie Kirk, he was better than, I don't know, whatever cocksucker in America loves Israel and loves murdering Palestinians. Charlie Kirk was better than those cocksuckers. But, he's still, pretty dirty and, against the population. So it's hard for me to work up feelings about, Charlie Kirk and his beauty queen wife, particularly when people like that ruined my life, and the lives of, oh, billions of other people around the globe. Yeah, and he had a mass platform, and he used that platform to, basically denounce people like me, and denounce all that our families had died for, been murdered for. Yeah, so if he gets assassinated, like 80, 90 years after my whole family, an hour away from where I'm sitting, were shot into pits, I can't get too excited. So, and, if America goes into civil war, that's unfortunate for the 10 or 20% of America that's actually decent. But, if the bad guys kill the bad guys, the more, Nazi pigs or Babbitts, Freikorps scum, the more CIA liberals get, they kill each other off. That's great. That's what America needs anyway. The trash. We have 300 years of trash in America. It hasn't been taken out, except for maybe, what would it be? 2% of the trash in the Civil War, let's say, was taken out. But, now we have Lindsey Graham, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden. I mean, they're filth. So, and it's a reflection of America. So, if the filth kills the filth, that's absolutely fine with me. Yeah, it's just, yeah, I wouldn't want to see, like, relatively normal, decent workers suffer, first and foremost. But, when the masses are too stupid to organize even a social democratic party independent of the CIA liberals, that's what's going to happen. The likelihood of that happening is rather significant. So, as the scumbags in Chicago that I was forced to work with for 15 or 22 years used to say, it is what it is.